There you go. All right, so that part's working. Right, I wasn't prepared to do anything with this meeting other than hit record, so how about if I give it to you and you can? I'm assuming from what the secretary said in the office that she thought that this group would get together and discuss the subject matter and then bring something back. Hey, David. There is no solicitor or anybody from his office. If you don't mind sitting closer, just so that the microphones will pick you up.
Sure.
All right.
Maybe I'll just, because I'm not sure who was at the last town hall meeting or not, but the notion was that, well, before town hall meeting, there was a proposal to form a task force. I'm using that term, even though that's not the term was used exactly, but that was the notion. We do have Ray here who can help us with the legal terms. Hi, Ray. To form a task force to write down and to have a concept what this will look like. And then it was solicited who is interested to be on that committee. And I believe about 16 people signed up to be on the committee. And then the town hall meeting took place and there was a discussion. Some people for it, obviously, some against it, or people with concern, I should say. And 16 people were too many to form a committee to work. And a motion was made approximately, I know it's being recorded, I have to be careful, but approximately the idea was that those 16 people will get together to figure out how they can govern themselves and then make a presentation back to town council. Am I doing okay so
That
far?
sounds
Yes.
accurate. I just thought there was going to be some guidance from the solicitor's office on that, but
No.
evidently I was wrong.
So far, so good. The town saves another $200, so it's not too bad. It's a joke. Perhaps it is best for me to reflect on something outside of myself. I think most of you know, some of you don't know that some time ago I had the idea that there should be protection of the historic buildings and form a district similar to 18 other towns have. But I'd like to put that aside for a moment. Let's not talk about what I envision. I would like to actually to point something that the town has formulated 2018, which is several months before we moved to Little Compton. So it has nothing to do with I wasn't here at the time. If you're not familiar with it, everyone familiar with this? Oh, Frank is here. Hi, Frank.
The comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan 2018. And there is very clear language there. And I believe you pointed that out to me, not if anybody else could have, I suppose. And there are some action plans, what the town wanted to do with the comprehensive plan. Should I read them or everyone is familiar with what it says?
No, I think it'd be great to start the meeting. What is in the comprehensive plan, what the town has essentially already agreed to do. And you know, and that's the directive. And within that direction, you know, any newly forming group, you know, is going to pick a mission and some goals and eventually some action items. And I think that's going to take multiple meetings. Carol, what's the ideal number for a committee? What number are we trying to get down to?
Well, you want an odd number. 5 is awesome. I'd probably not want to do more than 7.
Okay, so seven seats on the committee is the goal. I would say, I would like to introduce ourselves before we do anything, even read that, because I'm sorry, but I don't recall everybody's name. almost everybody, but I think that would, and it would be good for the record.
Mhm.
So David, why don't we start with you? You're sort of one end of the horseshoe.
My name is David Wardell.
You want to tell us why you're interested in this particular working group?
Curious what the ultimate goal is. Or, I just,
Yeah, I think to be determined, right, by this group itself.
I just would hate to see it go like a Westport Harbor where people are gonna look to dictate what I do on a piece of property that I own.
Yeah.
Any more so than they already do.
I'm Ray Holland, and we own property where the old post office was. And likewise, I'm here like David, trying to find out what it is that you want to accomplish.
I happen to be Carol Wardell. I'm the town clerk and I got stuck here recording. It's not that I'm pro or against or for this process. I am in favor of keeping a historical flavor when something's been designated that way. But I am very cautious as to how that happened. So I'm really just here I was as an advisor to the original group. So I'm here with interest, but more in an advisory capacity.
I'm Aras Sadanians. As I alluded to earlier, we moved here 6 years ago. I like historic things. Some things were built better in the past than currently. It also speaks of character of the town, and the town is made up individuals, human beings, and it speaks of the character of the human beings who live there. The Commons, I believe, is the only second Commons in Rhode Island. So it has certain historic value. And by no means that's in an economic manner. It's just beautiful architecture and place for people to gather. Some of you I spoke with directly and indirectly. And I guess I've been quite involved with this. It's a fair thing to say. I don't have any preconceived ideas what it should look like. Specifically, I don't have any preconceived ideas what kind of windows will go on or not, or what kind of solar panels will be allowed or not, etc. But I like to have an open mind about it in a most general sense to protect and preserve, perhaps preserve is a better word, to preserve the architectural character of the town and those particular buildings. And that is my interest. And I think as a group, we can come up with ways to comfort those who are concerned. I do not want to be told what to do. Tell you the truth, I don't either. But in a society, we all have give and take a bit. I made an off comment on the last meeting. I'm looking at Ray because we had a very nice discussion. You didn't call me, by the way. You still owe me a phone call.
So this is meant to be just a quick introduction. So let's move on to Carolyn.
Okay.
Well,
And can I just,
Well, actually, you'll have plenty of time to talk later.
he's wondering what I'm saying. I'm by saying I can't build a fourth floor is what I was referring to. But we'll talk about it.
Okay, Carolyn?
yes, I have lived here all my life, except for a short time when my husband was stationed in the Navy. And we came right back here. I've lived there all my life. I have a feeling that most people don't have because they haven't lived here that long. But I want to see the Commons preserved the way it is within boundaries of what buildings should look like, what is this now? Those that are already living here, they should be able to do what they want to with their house, but within certain parameters.
And your name?
I don't want to see someone come in here. There is property for sale at the Commons right now. We could get a chain, come in here and I've mentioned it as the Historical Society meetings. You don't know what they're going to come in with, some fast food or probably not, but you don't know. So we need to start thinking of what could happen and try to prevent it.
Great. And say your whole name, please.
Pardon me?
You didn't-
Montgomery. I am a citizen of Little Compton and have been for many years.
I'm Betty Sedanius. I know half of you. Now I'm going to get to know the other half. I'm Ira's wife. I'm interested in the preservation of the things that are important in Little Compton, because, that's why we moved here. And I think that's why people who have lived here forever stay here, because of those important aspects. Ira and I first started getting concerned about what was happening in town when they knocked down a house on Taylor's Lane at the beginning of the year. And it was actually owned by Dr. Taylor,
Right.
who Taylor's Lane was named for. And it sort of came as a shock to us. Obviously, the people that bought that property assured the people that they bought it from that they were not going to knock it down, that they were going to rehabilitate it. But as soon as, the ink is dry, then directions change. And I'd never been inside the house, but it certainly helped give a certain flavor to our neighborhood. And that was not the first house that was knocked down. We've only been here 6 years, but that's the fourth knockdown
Okay.
in a street of, 15, 20 houses. So that concerned us. I do want to have an open mind about things. I also want to point out that we live in a historic district in Providence, right across the street from Frank. And we found it nothing but helpful to us when we wanted to change our windows. They had suggestions about how to best do it. And they offered us suggestions about how to get grants and tax breaks and that sort of thing. So I found I had nothing but positive to say about being in a historic district. There were
Great.
no restrictions on our liberty, let's say.
Great.
I'm Maureen Rigo, and I've lived in town since 1973, pretty much. I'm here with a very open mind. I don't know one way or the other. I'm certainly open to listening to what people feel that own on the triangle, the commons. I definitely, one of the first times ever, my husband and I were walking on Benefit Street this past weekend. We were up in Providence to have a meal. And the homes are gorgeous. And I can see how preservation helps to maintain a flavor, so to speak. So with that, I pass it.
I'm Marjorie O'Toole, and I'm the director of the Little Compton Historical Society. And and maybe Mr. Holland can tell me if what I'm going to propose right now is even a legal thing. But my sense is that there is a seat saved on this committee for the Historical Society. Helen
Richmond Webb.
Richmond Webb is a board member on the Historical Society. And my proposal is that she and I share the seat and alternate at meetings in case one of us cannot be here. Helen has done years of preservation research and work at her other home in Maine, and I think she brings a lot more to the table regarding the nuts and bolts of how things are done than I do. So is it okay for us to have a historical society seat and either she or I would show up?
I think that's up to the committee.
Yeah.
This is loosey-goosey.
Okay.
It's a chat session. It has no power, has no authority. It really has nothing but maybe to report back to the council. So it's not like you're violating a state law or anything like that. The number is arbitrary, the discussion is arbitrary, and it carries no weight other than you get to know what everybody thinks.
Right.
No.
Right, the committee is not formed yet.
Okay,
This is a cluster of people that are interested in said committee
Yeah.
and that subject, but like he said, this is more like a work session type deal. It's, once they get to that stage, that's up to the council. If the council wants to say your seat can be shared by two of your members, then
okay,
representative.
all right.
Oftentimes you will see if you've got liaisons like that, that share a seat, it's I'll say like the chairman or their designee, and that's how it's phrased. So there would be no reason why they can't say the Historical Society seat is the director or her designee.
Okay, super.
What you have to be careful of is it causes a conflict sometimes. In other words, you have aims and goals within your society, and sometimes those run counter to what the committee would say.
Yeah,
In other words, you have an agenda, I have an agenda, David has an agenda, because we have an interest in the Commons because we own property here. Fulton does, Billy does, Scott Morrison does. So I can assure you, our aims are going to be a lot different than most of yours. So, but
Yeah.
we have a conflict, so.
I can assure you that they're probably closer than you think.
Yeah.
And I also say we have to be careful about speaking as an individual or speaking as a representative of,
Exactly.
and so that's what I need to be cautious of. But that's great that it's been done before because again, Helen, and, well, she can speak for herself, but she has years of experience doing this.
Yeah, I'm Helen Richmond Webb. I'm not a resident, but every other member of my family is.
You're a homeowner.
I'm a homeowner. And for more than 20 years, I've been the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission in a small town in Maine. So I have some experience with small town, rural preservation issues.
I'm sorry, do you live here?
I have a house here. I'm a resident of Maine.
Leslie Fox. I live on the Commons and have a very invested interest in whatever this committee ends up being. I was going to say, I think I'm the only one who actually has a background other than these two in historic preservation, but you definitely do. I have a college degree and worked for years for the organization that's now Historic New England, SPNEA. So 11 years there, way back when, a long time ago. My family has owned the house that I live in since 1970. And we were only the third owners of the house, and it was originally built as a bed and breakfast, actually. I am very concerned about individual or restrictions on individual homes, and I would like to see this committee be more focused on the Commons as you know, the whole Commons, the integrity of the Commons, you know, certainly perhaps, you know, guidelines toward any major changes, and that would have to be defined about what happens in the Commons over time, maybe with some authority in conjunction with the planning board. I'm not sure, but I am interested in maintaining what is a really unique place certainly in Rhode Island, if not all of New England at this point. So that's it.
My name is Warren Jagger. I live both in Providence and Little Compton. In Little Compton since 1993. I'm on the board of the Providence Preservation Society. I was past president of the board. So I'm very familiar with local historic districts and how they operate and what their benefits are, and also, you know, how they can affect the community. But I love I'm also on the board of Sakana Preservation, so I believe that the character of Little Compton is kind of there's a sort of two-sided piece to it. One is the distinct rural character of Little Compton, and the other one is the distinctly small town characteristic of Little Compton. So they're very intertwined. And I think anything that talk about architecture also has to be wary of the fact that land is a big part of Little Compton's character. And maybe we do not necessarily want to be, you know, it's just to be cautious about that, because I think people can get scared of regulation. And it's almost as important about like the rhythm of spaces and buildings as it is about the buildings themselves sometimes. That's all.
I am Frank Valtis. I live in Providence and have a home here for 40 years. I'm a Preservation Society member and pretty active member of the College Hill Neighborhood Association and the Mile of History Association, which is Benefit Street. And I've seen people come in to Providence, and it's a different structure in terms of governance, but who buy up the historic homes on Benefit Street. There are several, and just rip them apart, rent it to students, and let them deteriorate. And we have to put a lot of pressure on whatever we can on the city to do things. We just replaced this the lamps on Benefit Street. So it depends on the intention of the developer. Well, I think there's a difference between a developer and someone who owns property who wants to change it or make a difference in it or use it in something else. But I'm just concerned about developers who see opportunities and have no interest in the town and come in and promise various things. And what actually gets happened is monsters get built. And the powers that be in the city are a bit too, they're very much favorable of development. And the problem is there's no effective way to make sure the development is in keeping with the character of the East Side. And that's really been a real problem. If you've gone to the East Side, you've seen some new, very ugly things built where there used to be very nice homes because the developers want to rent to students and anybody else. They don't care about the town. So that's why I'm here.
Good, right. Well, I think that was nice for all of us just to hear who we were. Ara, do you want to go ahead and read what?
No, I want to actually add one more person who is not, who intended to be. Some of you familiar, I'm sure you are, and Clark Chotel is in Italy, and he couldn't be here, obviously, since it was scheduled when he is away. And he is a critical part of a group to be formed because just like, although I don't know you, I'm sorry, but I was very impressed with his knowledge and his understanding how something can be done while protecting the rights of homeowners. So I just want to represent him indirectly while he's not here. How it will all end up, obviously, we don't know, but so that's Clark Chotel. So with that in mind, I will read and what was written in 2018. Action 8C2A says, establish a committee that will maintain a list of historic and cultural assets in town, work with RIHPHC to develop a list of properties within the town that are potentially eligible for listing on the National Registry, and encourage property owners to nominate qualified properties to the National Registry. I'd like to make some points on that, if I may, and I think we should all discuss it a moment, what that means. My sense is that can be any house anywhere. Maybe I'll just pick on you. Your house is more than 50 years old?
My house, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Goes back.
So your house, I don't believe is on the National Registry when I look. You don't know where it is.
Which house?
Plus, we don't have the whole list.
Compton.
Yeah.
Little Compton, no. So I think that applies to someone like Frank, who says, you know what, my house has been 50 years, it has interesting character, I want to be registered. And I think that's what it's speaking of, that sentence. That's my understanding of it.
The section you just read.
The section I just read. So
Make a comment. I'm not sure how much having a whole historic register actually offers protection.
No, it's
it doesn't.
just for demolition.
But I think that's just one aspect of this committee. So I think it would be helpful to read the whole thing,
Yes.
get a sense of, the parameters set for this committee, and then we can discussed.
I think I want to make sure everyone understood what that sentence was to begin with. So HC2B, provide information on programs available to property owners who seek to voluntarily protect historic sites, and links to best practices preserve Rhode Island Historic Preservation easement. If I can reflect on that, my understanding, again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is this is probably speaking of what the Congregational Church did with the building across the street from them. You know about this?
They sold it.
They sold the easement so that, what's the name of the property?
The rectory.
The rectory, thank you. The rectory, new owner cannot change the outside facade. It has to stay, I shouldn't say that. Strike that, whoever is typing it. The new owner has to maintain the historic character of the outside facade of the building. I
Yeah,
think
that's
it
a
was,
record, that's a recorded.
that's recorded. I have it with me, actually.
Yeah, it's a
But
recorded.
that's a difference.
Right,
The seller had a restriction in the deed,
yes,
took less money to sell it
right.
in most cases in order to impose their will on the new owner.
Right.
Okay, I have no problem with that whatsoever. That's totally voluntary. But I don't want the town council and I don't want some committee here in town, and neither does Fulton and Morris. I'm speaking for about 5 or 6 of us. We don't want some committee telling us you gotta have certain kind of windows, you gotta paint it red, you gotta paint it black. If they want to do it voluntarily,
Get there.
that's fine.
We're gonna get there, right? But these are the writings of the comprehensive plan of 2018 of the town. I didn't write this.
I think it says, didn't you say voluntarily in there?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
It does say volunteer.
There's a third point. So the town in 2018 adopted 3 items. So we discussed the first one, Frank. We discussed the second one, the Congregational Church, as an example. So the third one, which is HC2C, explored the establishment of a voluntary historic district and financial and other incentives to encourage property owners to opt in. And then its references Warren Voluntary Historic District. So I think here it's a matter of interpretation, since it doesn't say which historic district. We can, for argument's sake, say that Taylor's Lane will be the historic district. We can say that, I think, reading that.
All Little Compton or just?
This is Old Little Compton. It says voluntary historic district. We can say it's Adamsville as a historic district. You can say anything you want, right?
Well, it's,
Yeah, not yet determined,
It's
it's
not,
not determined.
yet determined.
but that's how it reads. I'm just reading what it says. So that's what the town wants to do or wanted to do in 2018.
Right, and I think it's key and hopefully comforting for the people who do own property and are concerned that in both cases, voluntary was very intentionally put into the language. And I think it's interesting in the third point that it's to discuss incentives to make it appealing for people to choose to take part in the historic district. So at this starting point, any group that forms is not empowered to make binding rules, obviously, and it's not even asked to make binding rules. It's asked to come up with a voluntary program that will make it more likely that more buildings are preserved, more historic buildings are preserved in a way that will protect the character of the town. So it's a lot less than what ARA went to the town council for and was discussing with the town council several months ago. And honestly, I think it's a much better starting place because it's not dictatorial or controlling. It can be, it can be community building, really. to sit and talk about where we all come to agreement. I mean, if you want to be crazy with ideas, like I suspect everyone in this room would agree that we would not like a Taco Bell on the Commons, right?
Not what?
A Taco Bell on the Commons. So
Yeah, let me ask you, how do you do that? Okay, the zoning ordinance controls the use, okay, not the planning board. How do you stop that? I can remember, this is a long time ago, before the pizza parlor was there. And they walked into Sheetha's Real Estate and they wanted to put pizza parlor there. And they said, oh my God, we don't want a pizza parlor. We don't want that in the comments. We don't want this. And one old Yankee who owned the thing said, but we can get a commission, can't we? And they said, yes. And she said, go get that man. And they did, and that was Billy, and we have a pizza parlor, okay? You're gonna have that happen with the Commons lunch. It's gonna go broke, it is whatever it is, it's not working, somebody's gonna buy it, and somebody's not gonna buy it if there's a group of 30 telling them what the hell to do with it. David's got a building in back of his Wilbur Stower, I don't know what you're gonna do with that, but I don't think David's looking for someone to tell him what to do with that. That's zoning and, you know, I'm talking about windows and paint.
what if,
Yeah.
for the benefit of the whole community, because I would like the Commons lunch to keep looking pretty much like the Commons lunch, and I'm just speaking for myself. And that's quite frankly, probably going to be sold way before any kind of group gets its act together.
It's not at the price that we're asking, it is.
What if there was a group where if someone on the Commons or someone anywhere in town who wanted to sell could come to for information about things like the exterior preservation easements? And what if the town had incentives in place for that homeowner to help make up the difference in the selling cost? You know, they're going to lose something if they put the easement on, but maybe the town at least in the comprehensive plan, was open to the idea of incentives. What if there was an incentive that helped mitigate that loss, that financial loss? That's the sort of things where I think a group could be helpful.
I don't disagree, but we're down on money. Who's gonna finance the incentive? That's the only thing that we're talking about.
If the town as a whole would like to keep the historic look of the Commons or the historic look of its buildings, it might have to fork over some money as a whole in order to do that.
Can simply be a tax incentive.
I understand, maybe Carolyn's been here a long time, so have we. I don't know anybody else, David has, okay,
I've
but.
lived for all my life.
Yeah.
Maureen's been here since she was a child. You know, we are all pretty embedded in the community, each in our own way.
Years ago, you weren't even around here. There was a group of something, and they were going to change the Commons, and this was in an effort to put the police station down at the ball field. Okay, and they were going to do this and they were going to do that, and they hired a firm in Providence that came back with some lovely drawings. And everybody in the Commons met and everybody said, geez, that's nice. And the question came up, well, who's going to finance it? And this gentleman who represented the architectural firm or the designer said, well, it would have to be something, the town would have to dig in their heels and help too. And Mrs. Cabot said, this meeting's over. Thank you. No, thank you. And that was it. Okay. The town is not interested in, the Commons was good enough at that point. So you're going to have a real uphill battle with having everybody in town. I think, you know, you can give them tax incentives, but a tax incentive is nice, but it not, if you're gonna spend $1.5 million, $2 million fixing the Commons lunch and find out where the sewerage is going and this, that, and the other.
But that has nothing to do with architecture, the sewer, et cetera. That's interior.
I
I'm talking about the exterior.
So we put on the front windows right now, you know, that's artificial, that's not wood on the front.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's not wood in the front windows.
Well, neither is this here.
I don't just, right, so it's, I understand the idea, but when you get into, so if I put wood clapboard versus the cement board. Again, I don't want vinyl siding. I love history, I grew up here my whole life, I want it to look the way it is. However, there's a big difference in painting it every 6 years, or a trim, or anything else, and I just don't, we have a conservation committee. Housing is the issue. Conserving land, I mean, now we're gonna take it, and they already dictate with solar panels around the commons. And personally, in my view, the town hall looks great. The old police station, maintenance building, I mean, it looks like the town has to get their own stuff in order before they start pointing fingers. Republican committee just put up a nice sign ahead of his road. I mean, there's someone to come in and start dictating what we're gonna do. Or what we're gonna put on it just because people like it. I agree, I want Commons Lunch to look similar, but it didn't look like that 20 years ago when it burned down. You know, it wasn't the same, so.
One thing.
Really enjoying enough people to come from the outside to come in and say, oh, we bought you because we like the character.
One thing preservation really has to do is it has to make sure the buildings and the town succeeds, that buildings get used, that buildings that don't support themselves, like commercial establishments, if they don't support themselves, that's not preservation. You know, they have to succeed economically, and that's the best way to preserve things, is not to, like, you know, place restrictions so that it becomes a museum. It quickly becomes sort of like a mausoleum as opposed to a museum, because you've got to have opportunity for modernization of systems, of materials, of utilities, everything like that. It's not, you're not going to get to that fine grain kind of thing. But I think everybody believes that the character of Little Compton is very special, and they appreciate it. So I think much of what was in that plan, I think pretty much everyone can agree with. It's just a matter of like how you make it a little more embedded in maybe in our statutes in some way. With, you know, but again, preservation is about maintaining the vitality of a town as well as its character. So that's, I just think.
It's true.
Maybe if I can reflect. We went through this, my wife and I, in Providence. We needed windows changed. I'll give 2 examples actually. The storm windows. There were old storm windows that I had to get up like 2 floors and hang it up with wooden, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really difficult. So we applied, and I don't mind applying. And well, I didn't, she did actually, but I was working. And they guided us to use this specific aluminum windows, which was entirely carefree. I never had to do anything about it. It was probably ended up with tax incentives cheaper than what I would have gotten something else. So it was really more of a resource and like, wow, I can do this. I never thought about it kind of stuff. And that speaks of the other thing it spoke earlier in the document, that it will guide and help people to preserve their property. If you want to put concrete, but as long as it maintains the architectural character, I am sure whoever is on this committee is going to agree with it.
Can I say something? I'd really like to not get bogged down by talk about specifics, like whether it's concrete or brick or vinyl or whatever. I don't think that's my understanding from what you read. That's not our task.
You're right.
To get into those specifics. And I think some of us, I know I do, feel really strongly about that. And I don't want to spend a lot of time arguing about shingles versus, you know, whatever.
You are
So
correct.
I'd like to stay away from that if we could. I also want to say that my personal feeling is that, yes, in the past, you know, talk about changing the commons or whatever, there wasn't money from the town contributing to, you know, sort of preserving the integrity of the commons or even recognizing it very much. But my feeling is now we're at a point in time when this is all going to change. What we have is really special. Most other towns don't have what we have. So I'd like to see something move forward, whether it's incentives or some kind of empowerment, whatever it may be, to recognize that the town's going to, Commons is going to undergo change. There's no question with all of the other changes to buildings that are happening in town. It's just a matter of time now. So just want to focus on that.
I think your point's very well taken. I think the other thing that I would like to bring us back to is that we're not the committee. We're a
Right.
group that's supposed to decide if there should be a committee, and if there should be a committee, how many people would be on it, and who would those people be? Not who by name, but would we have a business owner, a homeowner, historical society member? So I think we need to remember that we're not the committee.
Good point.
I'm just not clear on the intent then.
I'm sorry?
I'm just not, just need clarification on the intent.
Intent.
Yeah, so what is the purpose, when we have the conservation committee? What is the purpose of what are they crying?
So three things, David.
The voluntary stuff?
It's the voluntary stuff. And that's where we are right now. So this committee, which I think should form because it's in the comprehensive plan. So I just think it should. List the historic assets in town, right? So a list was done in 1990, which to someone my age seems like it was yesterday, but really it's quite old now. And that was a list of, Carlton Brownell worked on that with the state office. And there's a lovely book. I might even have extra copies of the book at the office that I can give to people who are interested. And it's online. It's online. So essentially these houses these buildings are eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. So that's a directive for this group. It's nice. It's not like I don't think it's a super high priority for me, but it's nice. It's a nice thing to put your house on the National Register. It costs a ton of money, like about $10,000 to get the paperwork done for that. And then there is no real protection or no real obligation to the homeowner. The homeowner can knock that house down. The only protection is from government-sponsored projects. So if Wilbur Store is on the national, and actually Wilbur Store technically is on the National Register because it's part of the Commons, which is on the National Register. If the federal government wanted to knock down Wilbur Store or any building on the Commons, it's not that they necessarily couldn't, but there would be a very detailed review process before that happened. So it's really just protection from government tearing down your building. That's it. Second thing that this committee is charged with is to inform property owners of things they could do voluntarily to help preserve their building, like the preservation easement, which really impacts the next owner more than the current owner. But maybe there's more out there and things are changing all the time. So it would be the committee's job to become knowledgeable about those things and to share those opportunities with homeowners completely voluntary, right? And I think our folks who are already involved in Maine or in Providence, I'm sure they know 10 times more than I do about what's available out there, what other people have done. And I think it needs to be a long process to learn what other towns have done, what's working in other places. And then the third thing is the voluntary historic district. Would your family like to put your property into a voluntary historic district? And how can the town make it worth your while to do that? And we don't know the answer to that. But that would be our charge to make it so appealing to you to join the historic district that that's something that you want to do.
And I fully support those three things. But again, that's different than changing your strong windows.
Totally, that's why I wanted to get.
So we're not going to talk about storm windows.
Yes. Yep.
Now, 10 years from now, we may be in a different place, and 10 years from now, maybe the town as a whole is ready for more restrictive practices. I think we're really far away from restrictive practices. My understanding was this wording was really hard to get into the comprehensive plan. There was a lot of debate and a lot of compromise at that point. And I think that's all that this group is charged with, is to carry out what's in these three things. Now, there are other things that are sort of like harmless and fun, right? Would we like plaques on our historic houses? I mean, that's just cute, right? So maybe that's something we would take on and do. I really don't think we would have the power at all. I mean, I know we don't have the power at all to be punitive or directive. I think it's encouraging and supportive and educational.
May I just think that you mentioned the Conservation Commission, and maybe Carol, you could, speak to, but it's my understanding that's more concerned with the natural resources of Little Compton and has nothing to do with the built environment, which is kind of a term you use in preservation circles. The natural environment is our water quality, our drainage, our saltwater incursion, all kinds of things, and flora and fauna. Here we're talking about the built environment and that. Okay. So I think the Conservation Commission has no interest in historic character or that we or this committee, whatever, may end up being that body that urges concern for that, and in some measure, some sort of lifts up some measure of importance to protecting the historic character of the commons and the built part of Little Compton.
Architectural character.
It seems as though having a committee and having a public conversation about it will only bring people's attention to the bigger issues. I mean, if I've seen it happen, you've seen it happen, the Commons lunch gets torn down and a red and yellow and blue plastic building gets put in there and everyone's shocked. So just the fact that there's conversation about concern for it, hopefully, so you could shoehorn McDonald's into that very building. It's been done in lots of towns and it still looks like out on the outside. I'm not advocating for a plan or anything else, but there are lots of different ways other than specific materials to talk about mass and things, just so that to have the conversation about what it is that makes the common, what it is, what everybody likes about it, and to have those things articulated, I think would be a good thing too.
So this group is supposed to pick the 7?
Not pick the 7.
Okay,
A suggestion.
make a suggestion.
My suggestion is, are we all in agreement that we would like to suggest that it's not a 5-member group, it's a 7-member group?
Yes.
Okay,
I think it will be.
then of that 7-member group, are we going to say to the council, you guys just do it at large and it's 7 people and it's up to the council who sits on that? They pick and choose and appoint as they want? Or does this group, not me, I don't want to keep myself including in it. Does this group think that you should suggest that there be maybe at least 2 members on the committee that would be property owners of historical properties? Should there be someone that has preservation background? Should there be someone that's an attorney? Should there be someone that might be an architect? All of those types of things may be something you might want to look at. And I think in all of this, we need to make it, keep saying we need to make it clear to the council that you are recognizing that you're only intending to respond to what is in the comprehensive plan. My thought is that if you do that, and that committee then creates a set of resources for people that may want to then name their properties as being historical in nature, or resources for the person who's already got a historical property, that when they go to do some change, this committee would be a resource for them to say, hey, I want to do X, Y, Z. Do you know if there's any funding out there? Do you know if, where can I go to see what I may want to do to keep it historical in nature or to make it look the same? Resources is the big thing that I'm coming up with, not mandates,
Yeah.
but resources for somebody. And then if that person, David or Ray or anybody, says, I'm not gonna do that, I want that pink window, then they get the pink window, because there's nothing in zoning that says they can't. If somewhere decades down the road, there's another group that feels it's got to that point that they need to do some sort of stronger enforcement, that would mean that they'd have to come back to the council and do some sort of zoning change. And I don't think Little Compton's ready for that at the moment. But I think the proposal to the council needs to make it clear it's just these voluntary things that are listed, suggesting 7 people, and then if you can come up with sets of people that you think should be represented on this committee, then that's as much as this committee, I think, itself should.
That's great. And then we write a letter to the council with those recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, if you're only meeting this once, then I would say you nail that out now so that it gets
Mhm.
put together and, one person drafts it, circulated amongst yourselves. If everybody agrees, that's what we talked about and agreed upon, then that gets submitted to the council and they take it from there.
But I don't think it should be limited to the people in the room. I mean, this meeting is at 12 o'clock on Tuesday. There's certainly people that would have an interest.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't have the ability to be part of that, because there should, in the suggestion, there should be seats that are at large, what we call at large seats, and anybody can apply for them. But these are the people that responded
Yeah.
to coming to hash this out. I know, that's why we're recording, and he may or may not be able to understand us in this recording. Hopefully he can, and he can submit his suggestions, because I'm not suggesting that it be finalized right this moment. I think the bulk of the work needs to be done, and your perspective of what is going to be suggested to the council should be agreed upon in general, but I think it then should be circulated, and I can ask the solicitor's office to do what they did with the other email of say, this is what this group came up with from their work sessions. Does anyone have any further comments? And then once that process has happened, then it goes to the council.
That makes sense.
I just, you almost have to take baby steps.
Yep.
And recognize that the comprehensive plan does want it to be voluntary, so take that step and suggest that this group really be a group that's going to do the research to find those resources for people if they're interested.
The committee.
The committee, whatever the committee is that gets established by the council after this process is done.
So our role is to come back to the town council and say that we think that there should be a committee made up of 7 individuals. We think that they should be 2, we'll say, property owners and 1 architect or whatever, but we won't name any names.
Right.
And the committee, the town council will say yes, or maybe they'll say no, we don't like it, we changed our mind. But if they say yes, then
it's up to them.
that's up to them, and then it would be posted on the website, looking for people to sit in those seats, right? We wouldn't come up with a name.
No, that would be for the council to
So
do.
it's open to anybody in town.
Yes.
To be on.
So if you suggested an attorney and you suggested an architect and you suggested 2 property owners, is that 4? So we need 3 more would be at large. Then when people that express an interest to sit on that committee, if they choose to do it, meaning the council, then we would suggest that they say in their letter of interest that I'm looking to serve the role of the architect. I'm looking to serve the role of the attorney. I'm looking to serve the role of a property owner, so that it's clear once all of those letters come in, the council will know, okay, well,
And should we recommend a term length?
I would leave that to the council.
And
I mean, you could, but I would leave it to the council.
in my interpretation of the comprehensive plan, it says the work is going to be done in partnership with the Historical Society. So I would like, we just use the
Yeah.
word advocate for there to be a seat reserved for the Historical Society.
And I did know that in my head. I just didn't babble it out loud.
And I mean, how many at-large seats should a committee have?
Well, that dictates by how many of those designated ones you've got.
Right.
You know, if you end up with 5 that are designated and we're saying it's only 7, then you got 2 that are at large.
So just to, in the effort of time, because I know I have to go back to work. Historical Society, an attorney, a preservationist, 2 property owners, and 2 at-large would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I don't think you need an attorney.
Okay, all right.
It gets too adversarial.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a fact finding kind, you don't need a lawyer telling you what to do. You need people who live here. You know, they can, Tony DeSisto can fight about that at some point
No,
later on.
that's okay. I mean, I only actually said it because you
And-
said next. to me.
I understand. And I don't think you need an architect. And then now you're getting down to like you were talking about windows and colors and things like that. It's more than architecture that you're talking about. It's a concept for the commons.
Well, if one of the jobs is to make a list of buildings eligible for the National Register, architecture is good.
Well, is that what you're getting into? I mean, I'm
That's
not.
one of the things.
It's one of the 3 jobs.
The list is.
But it can be an architectural historian.
An architectural,
Be an
I'll tell you, Mark Schodel is a stand-up guy. I would put him on this group in a heartbeat.
Who's this?
Clark Schodel, he's retired to Little Compton, has had a home here for many years, did preservation stuff in Providence for many, many years. And he was my right-hand guy on the last historic house tour that he did. And, you know, he just walks into a house and he understands, you know, every aspect of its historic architecture. You know, he brings a lot to the table. But we can call him a preservationist as well as, I mean, he could go under either of those categories.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that this particular group can't get information,
Mm.
the Clarks of the worlds or the.
Yeah.
You know, people that have significant education in
Mhm.
those areas.
So who do we have so far? You remember?
So if we cross out the attorney, which I'm fine with,
Makes sense, by the way.
you
You don't need a doctor, you don't need an attorney, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
This, you know,
Who did
you don't need a doctor, you don't need, I mean, it's just,
So we have
That's fine.
Historical Society, 2 property owners on the common,
Well, yeah, I mean,
a preservationist, and 3 at large makes 7.
Okay,
yeah. So I think we could either do 3 at large or we could do 2 preservation professionals.
I think that would.
I think you should have just regular people, at least 3 on there.
I think in the sense that this is a committee that you're gonna find Little Compton residents will be interested in potentially participating in, much like you were, and well, all that are in this room. Having 3 at large is probably a good thing.
Okay.
Because you can always, like I said, you can always, if for some reason Clark isn't the one that's put in for the preservationist, you can always utilize him as a resource.
Or he could be at large.
Well, I mean, if it happened, I'm just saying that you may find that there's enough people here that have, in the town, I mean, that have interest and knowledge in this area, that you may find that you've got a lot of people on the committee that have preservation background. You know, just because we're saying that 3 at large doesn't mean they don't have that background.
is this townwide, another talking?
Yeah.
You know,
It was initially thought through ours desire that it would just be specific to the commons. The comprehensive plan talks town-wide. So it's something that because you own a historic property on the commons, you would have the ability to go to this group if it ever gets formed and off the ground for resources, if there's something that you wanted to do.
I go to Myron.
No, well, no, but I mean, they may have some
I
funding
understand.
source that
I-
they know of for you, that sort of thing.
He brought out a very good point. You went to somebody and they said, these windows are better, and he liked them.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a resource that
That's,
you go
that's
to.
the type
and that's
of
good.
resource
Okay.
that, I mean, not that they're gonna get into Windows, but,
But you don't have to have those.
right,
windows.
right, it's all voluntary. All
That's the key.
right, so
The
one,
idea would be there's an incentive, somehow, wouldn't it be nice if the town incentivized getting windows that are historically and, energy appropriate and all that good stuff? Not punishing you if you choose not to.
If you do that, you're on both ends of the spectrum. There's gonna be a group that's gonna be concerned with Secana Point, and there's gonna be a group that's concerned with the barn and David's father's place down,
Adamsville.
store, the Gracie store. God knows what that's gonna be when they get through with that down there. So it's much more, let's call it worldwide than I was thinking about. I was thinking if it's going to be just the Commons, I think you want a bigger group of people that are in the Commons that have a vested interest, that it directly affects them. And the gentleman you meant, Clark, whatever, I don't mind listening to him, but not if it's gonna cost me money to put the windows he wants.
No, we're not
Okay,
gonna do
there's
that.
gotta be draw that line.
Great.
I think we're decades away from doing that.
I'm just saying this, and you don't know me well, it actually was welcome to have Providence Historic Society behind us. It actually was cheaper and more meaningful. It's,
Maybe it's just
Set up-
the Yankee mentality down here. I don't like somebody telling me what to do.
many people.
We
What's new?
beyond that,
understand that. We
we
do.
are beyond that.
No power involved.
But that's not the way it started out. Okay, when I was, it was more that this is gonna be mandated, and if you did this, then you had the next owner got it, and
We're in a different place now.
And I'm
Different place.
on to you.
Oh, could you-
I don't mean to take him too much time.
Oh, no.
I've said it 7 times. I don't mean
You can
to
say-
be late.
Hey, can I ask that you respond offline?
Yeah.
Only because I need to get back in the office.
Okay, I have to show him.
Should we specify that someone be from the Commons though? Because the Commons has the potential to be. The Commons is a particular, I would say. Ideally, someone represents a homeowner, a property owner on the Commons, and someone represents a property owner in Adamsville Village.
They have the most to lose, the most to gain. So they've got a horse in the race. And it's a kind of point. You got the town dock, you got the Wilbur's Annex store that was down there. God knows, that's not gonna stay the way it is. It's either gonna fall down or it's gonna get knocked down. And the Commons, those are the 3 business areas.
Okay, yes, that makes sense to me.
Who's gonna draft the letter? Who'd be willing to draft the letter?
I'm fine.
Is that, you're willing?
Yeah.
Betty? Okay, that would be terrific.
There was
So
no
who
arm
are we
twisting
gonna
there.
send this letter to? Everyone in this room,
Hey.
plus whoever was on the list of 16
Yeah,
people.
what I would do is send it back to that Catherine that was dealing with setting up your meeting.
Oh, not Catherine.
No, was that another good idea? Because I wasn't included in those.
Oh, you were? Oh.
Send it to me. Send it to me. I'll take it from there. Send it to me and I'll take it from there.
So I'll draft it, send it to you, and you're gonna distribute it?
Means you can't retire.
Yes, she's gonna
I'm
distribute
sure I
it.
can.
Can't retire.
You're gonna distribute it, right?
Yes,
Okay, so I'm not gonna send it to the group.
yes.
There are 2 different committees like you presented to the town council. It's just one.
One thing,
Okay, so the plaque committee is part of the
Yes.
historical
Maybe.
preservation.
whatever.
Maybe.
Okay,
If,
maybe.
if we
Gotcha. Okay.
decide to make it,
Okay,
it's a possibility for this group.
gotcha.
Embedded in those.
Yes, okay.
Okay, I have a question if I'm drafting this, just to be sure, because we talked about 2 property owners. And now we're talking about 3, or we're still?
No.
Still talking about,
Still 2, but it would be one from
Commons,
Commons and one from the Adamsville Village.
but we're not gonna get into the point right now. right?
No, not at the
I
moment.
think it will
I think those two are fine for now, and if somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
This committee takes off like a house of fire and the council needs more people, they'll amend it and put more people on.
Great. And as you said, we can consult with people, people can volunteer to help us. It doesn't necessarily have to be only those 7 voices. Great.
So we can make a motion to conclude the meeting.
I never motioned to open it. This wasn't formal in that sense. All right, so one.
What's the thing of that building?
All right. Hang on the exhibit.
All right.
Here it is. This.
This is important.
Seen you so often.
I live on Congress.
That's